Sorry. Sorry, you're going to have me a little bit longer because it's a great pleasure to hosting now this panel, and yeah, well, not necessarily talking about what I have been elaborated in my little keynote, but of course we are talking about how we can keep our democracy alive and how we can improve it in very difficult times we are faced with. And I'm very, very happy to have quite a strong panel here with me. And I really like Braxton with his unfinished lab because the name is really great and it's describing how the situation is. Yeah, I start with you, Braxton.
Sure.
What do you think? Well, what are you doing, and basically, how can you support the democracy with your approach?
Well, I'd say one of the primary things are now doing is trying to involve different experts and constituencies in the development of these new DAOs and new systems. So we started, working on our project years ago, focused as technologists do on the technology. Became quickly clear, looking at what's happened with Facebook and others, that when all the decisions are made by technologists alone for corporate interests, the incentives are not aligned with society's needs more broadly. So we created an institute based out of Paris for the sole purpose of removing economic incentives for the construction of governance to focus on the society, and bringing together political scientists, social scientists, ethicists, with technologists to work at the speed of technology, but with these intersectional skills to build systems that work for everyone.
Albert, you are representing the Catalan state, and you are promoting open data and transparency. So basically, I think so you're providing open playing field for us. So what does that mean to democracy, and how would Braxton fit into your model?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation on participating here. I'm super happy to be able to share some thoughts. So yeah, we need to. I'm part of the Open Government Secretariat of the Catalan government. So, and we have a lot of room for improvement in the open government, let's say, and also in the whole set of the democracy. Something I joined the government like 5 months ago. So I'm still in the learning phase, let's say, and we are trying to assess what impact can we have. And one of the things we want to change is that democracy is a very poor user interface, where you basically input one byte, right, one vote every 4 years, and then you expect this thing to work perfectly for the next 4 years. So this is like making an investment and not looking at it during 4 years. So this is what we want to improve, and with technologies, and I think this mix of sociologists, technologists, political scientists, we need this mix in order to evolve this user interface, let's say, of democracy. There is one specific idea I was learning from a researcher from Chile. It's called Cesar Hidalgo, and he talks about having more like an algorithmic or approach, where an algorithm can represent your interest in the political space, in the same way that when we are investing, more and more people are using robo-advisors. So you are not keeping a daily activity on your investment, so you delegate your interest, and then you trust some algorithms based on your preferences. So we see potentially one line of thought, and how can the interest of the people be represented in algorithmic form, so they can have more influence in the day-to-day operations of the democracy, for example. And many of them, just a provocative one.
Very.
Well, you are also working on a government side, but not on a very small little state, Andorra, and you're promoting the diversity of the entrepreneurs. In what can a small country like Andorra provide to startups and entrepreneurs? And yeah, how what does it mean to democracy?
Well, good morning. Thank you also for being here. Well, basically, and following a little bit the track of Braxton and Albert, no, it's and the blockchain space. It's important to understand that we are disrupting. No, we're changing the things, how we do the things, and where we are going, and we're changing from horses to cars. No, so the changes is difficult. No, and in the sense they were saying, no, it's not only the technician part who has to be very well done, but also we have to talk about other things, no, and which things are coming up. And since my point of view as disruptive innovator, that's my job, no, and that's how we understand how we transform things. We transform blockchain is not only a technology. In fact, technology for blockchain is just the tool that allows to disrupt the trust. And basically, that's the point where for new democracy, or for creating this new democracy, I think it's a better point of view to treat it as it is, not only on what we're gonna do, which would be the technical part, no, but how we're gonna do, no, and this how we're gonna transform the trust, no, and in fact, when talking about disruptive innovations, it's always 10 times less costly and 10 times more effective, no? That means, that's why it's exponential. And the good thing to understand now is that we're gonna exponentiate the trust, the confidence in the world, no? And that's to come back to our subject, which is reinventing, no? And this reinventing, we have to take really in care where are we, since we're going to have more trust, no, how things going to change. Meaning we're going to have more trust means that there's going to be much more relationships, that everything's going to go much more better, and that's important. And in the point of view of my state, or perhaps I talk later a little bit from Andorra, it's very interesting to understand that we are a small society, so everything is very close to us. So we can be a very nice laboratory of transformation, of showing how this confidence, how this trust is changing in the society, and how with this exponentiality of trust, we're able to do much better, no? And just to end up, the important thing, and I think it's the problem we face in the blockchain space or here, I don't have to explain what is blockchain, of course, but makes us understand that our purpose or our next challenges, or the next challenges, the primary next challenges, and I think Kirse Salomon told yesterday about which is the purpose of the association, no, is to mass adoption, no? And this the mass adoption, if we go in and talk like the car builders, which are the technicians, and starting to know which are the pieces of each engine, and this, for the mass adoption, this has no sense. But instead of being car builders, our message should go from the drivers of the car and driving the trust where to a place where we have much more trust, and democracy should take a look on that side, no? More relationships, more trusting. We believe in the machine, and the machine allows the people to have more trust in between them. Perhaps now it's a time to understand that we have to not only trust in the machine, but trust in persons. And that's the new democracy. Trust in persons could be a nice point.
Well, this brings me to another question. This is a little bit below the surface. It's automating democracy, or the democracy running. So I'm coming back to that later, because that's, I think, is a very interesting approach. But this young man on my left side, he sure is not Eloisa, who can't be here. So he was. I'm very thankful that you joined the panel. And yeah, before I had a very great conversation with you only recently about the dangers of the blockchain technology. But before we get to that point, there was one point in the statement that, that small states can be a laboratory for testing. And from my experience, states like Estonia here in Europe, well, Malta, they were really fast and early in adopting it here in Europe, the new technologies at all. Do you think that small states really have an advantage in front of bigger ones?
Absolutely. By the way, is the microphone working? Yes.
Yes.
Sort of. Anyways, yes. And by the way, thank you for the young man comment. That actually stopped there. I don't think I've been called out this millennium, but thank you. So to answer your question, sure, small states have a huge advantage. To the extent they're not enmeshed into larger systems that control them, EU, United States, whatever, to the extent they have legislative and regulatory freedom, or at least can operate in a ambiguous zone, yes, because they have the advantage. Normally you have the advantages of economies of scale, but that can work against you when you have too much mass, too many constituencies. You have coordination issues. It's just hard to get 200 million people on the same page. But you can get 5 million people or 1 million people on the same page much more easily. And so, yes, they can be nimble, they can be fast. They also, what they do doesn't necessarily have the same massive impact that when a larger country does it. So people are less worried about it. They have more latitude. So whether it's an emirate in the United Arab Emirates like Dubai, whether it's a canton like Zug in Switzerland, whether it's a country like Andorra or Liechtenstein or Luxembourg or Estonia, to use an expression from Tocqueville, they're laboratories of democracy. They're laboratories of regulatory freedom. They're laboratories of what may work. And they can experiment, they can sandbox, they can adjust quickly, they can be responsive to people. And then the larger countries can adopt as they see fit these quote unquote smaller models. But I would also challenge the premise that there is such a thing as a small country anymore. Okay, when we think small country, we're thinking geographical space or amount of population. That's a little bit of an archaic concept in the world of the internet and the blockchain. Andorra is no bigger or smaller than the United States on the blockchain. Okay, it's not bigger or smaller than the United States on the internet. Okay, it's not bigger or smaller than the United States with its banking laws, right? Because once you have a jurisdiction that allows a certain thing, and the jurisdiction is, OECD and whitelisted and allowed to operate on in the same world as these other countries, it's not smaller in any practical sense. So I think we should, sort of jettison that idea or be a little bit more careful with the sort of small country point of view. It's just, they're just jurisdictions that have a certain historical and cultural attitude. So I think, you can, like, Catalonia, we have a interesting sort of microstate hybrid situation here. It allows an amount of legislative and regulatory freedom that's not elsewhere, but it's not smaller than anywhere else in a way that matters. And I also want to just touch briefly on the overall topic, if I might. There's two ways to look at revising democracy through blockchain. There's reforming existing systems, i.e. making the voting that we have now, one person, one vote, more transparent, less corrupt, more accountable. That's sort of like layer one. Layer two is, you alluded to this, the concept of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, can envision new forms of democracy that weren't allowed or weren't possible before. We have right now sort of an analog democracy. There's one person, one vote, the electronic version of paper ballots, done. When you go digital, when you go to the blockchain, you can have new forms of democracy, things we haven't imagined before. For example, we can have reputation-based voting. Right? You don't have reputation-based voting in our current systems, but maybe we should have it. So it's not just revising or reforming democracy. We may be heading towards democracy 2.0. I think it's important to keep in your mind there's a difference between making the existing systems better and creating new systems that are possibly enabled by this new technology. And I think certain jurisdictions may have an advantage there.
Well, you were presenting the concept of the DAOs yesterday very strongly. So, but let's now.
It's a thing.
Definitely, I can tell. And from my perspective, you are a young man. That's when an old white man is when an old white man is talking
Oh my
to.
gosh. Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty sure most people, he's younger than I am. Yes, go on.
But let's move to this issue of the dangers of the blockchain technology.
Sure.
It's a highly transparent, and you store the data in it forever, and you can't delete the data out of it. And so there is a lot of potential for it to be used in a
Right. So, and I don't want to take over the whole thing, but there's value to anonymity. There's value to privacy. Okay. People say if you have nothing to hide, you might as well just share it. That's a very totalitarian point of view. Okay. There's an economic, political, autonomy, philosophical value to privacy. Okay. To be able to say what you think within a selected audience, to be able to not say what you think. Okay. And the right to remain silent. And one of the points I made yesterday is that the coercive joining of a group is just as bad as not allowing people to join groups. So the problem, the challenge, look, I'm a blockchain and DAO attorney. I support this movement, but I think we shouldn't be blasé about the fact that it's not necessarily a good thing when every action is recorded forever and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, when I'll use just an extreme example. I mean, someone publishes kiddie porn to the Bitcoin blockchain, it's never going away. It's always going to be there. All right, and defamation, there's no retraction on the blockchain. Right, so we need to be careful and cautious about this. And we're creating records that even if you create those records in a democratic open system, governments change. And what may not be incriminating now, having certain points of view, 20 years from now may be held against you. We're seeing that in the cultural sphere. When certain opinions that 20 years ago were fine, maybe it's okay that people have all their points of view, but when things that they said in 1970 are being used against them in 2021, you have to question whether or not that makes sense. So I think it doesn't mean you don't use your brain. That doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable, but there is some kind of value to just going through life without people staring at you all the time. And with blockchain, the eyes are always on, and it's persistent memory, so it's potentially dangerous.
I think to add to kind of about technology being dangerous, I think any technology that's impactful has the potential to be dangerous, right? And that's why I think it's so important you get the right people involved early versus the authoritarians and the people that we would be concerned about who are aggressively moving into this space, or already in this space. But one thing that Alex said on that note is, I agree with was technology is just the tools, right? It's how they're used. And I think that one thing we're trying to focus on with democracies and how this technology would disrupt, which I agree with you with, we're focused more on this disruption, which I think is inevitable, is these three key aspects of this technology that with increasing levels of agency. So tokens, nodes, and code. If you think about the way those will impact democracy in order, tokens allow us to do things now like quadratic voting or reputational voting, and experiment with new models of democratic kind of frameworks that we can't currently experiment with our current industrial age system. The node operation allows people to actually get involved in the actual operation of government, because if code is law, those nodes can adopt or not adopt forks in the code and changes and actually have agency over how we actually operate, what system we're actually operating. And then finally, the code itself, almost all these projects are open source, so people that have the skills can actually be involved in effectively writing laws in a way that currently it's a big divide between the elites in the halls of Congress and then everyone else. So I think that it's really important, and we're focused on this a lot, is getting tokens, nodes, and code to be positioned in a way that they help foster democracy as opposed to being used to consolidate power.
So quick comment on that. I think tokens, I think the merger of tokens and governance is revolutionary, because what we're doing is we now have tools to create incentives within democracy. We now have tools to gamify democracy and produce direct feedback loops and rewards for behavior that we couldn't before. So that's going to change how people behave. Yeah. The whole premise of a DAO, I mean, the A in DAO is autonomy, right? Centralized autonomous organization. I was talking about this yesterday. What makes a DAO autonomous? What makes a DAO, not just a limited liability company that's been ported to the blockchain? Well, it's the fact that it can generate its own internal economy. Yeah. You need tokens in order to do that. But once you do that, you're kind of divorcing the democracy from the underlying national economy to the extent you care. And so I think it's just, I mean, I'm agreeing with your point. It's an interesting challenge when you gamify or incentivize voting. This 21st century is going to be very interesting.
Well,
Yeah. All right.
Albert first, because we now have these two diverting positions. On one hand, the DAO with a lot of options, let's put it this way. On the other hand, you have the potential risk. And whenever there is risk, there are people that definitely will at least try to take advantage of it. How can an administration deal with the situation, and what is the way out to direct it in the right direction?
Yes, we were discussing also before, probably we need to play a role of level playing field a little bit with all the ideas. And that's important in the democracy also. So to be able to have people who are very in favor of one opinion, even one technology, and people who are also observing and maybe experiencing the dark side. Because some of this idea, there is, and that's linked with some of the previous comments, there is a French philosopher called Paul Virilio. He died two years ago, but he was explaining about the integral accident. So whenever you create a technology, at the same exact time you are creating this technology, you are creating its accident. And he said, whoever created the boat invented the sinking at the same time. Whoever created the car created the car accident at the same time. So whenever we are creating DAOs and blockchain, we are creating its accident. And it's important to take into account this potential accident. And probably the role of the government is to raise this flag, say, be aware of this risk, and not to dismiss the current system as a bad system, because it has been here for centuries, as this building. So probably our role is a little bit to be to find this level playing field between the different technology options, and also to enable experimentation. At the same time, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not from a legal school. I'm from a law background. I'm more from a technical background, and I'm very used to learn by testing things, by doing things. And I think it's important, as you were mentioning also, no, the code we need to test, we need to see what are the results, measure the sandboxing approach. So these kind of things, we also should be more flexible with that in order to learn faster, because the society goes very fast, and we are, as a government, as administration in general, we learn still quite slow. So we need to catch up a little bit.
So I'm really fascinated by the idea of self-driving democracies. I mean, we are getting used that we will have self-driving cars pretty soon. I think that there is an option into this direction for democracies. I think that it's not aware, but there's too many people yet. Yeah, but of course, it always will be the people that fill it with life.
Like, can I give a cautionary note?
Sure.
I mean, okay, so almost every country's constitution allows for amendment. Okay, you know, our analog constitutions, our written constitutions have a process for amending that. There's an error correcting mechanism built into it. It may be tough to exercise, but it's there. There's a potential, and again, I support, you know, because I support DAOs, because I support blockchains, I try to look at what might go wrong, the accidents, so that we were just talking about this yesterday, you know, smart people learn from their own mistakes, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. You know, if geniuses, hopefully, or prophets, you know, anticipate and, you know, move around them in the future. We have these analog constitutions that we can amend, we can course correct. Worst comes to worst, we can have a revolution and overthrow the government and write a new constitution. I'm not advocating that, I'm just saying it's there. What's potentially worrisome about DAOs, especially when they're tied into the real world with artificial intelligence and drones and everything else, is that you may start developing systems that look like they're amendable, look like they can evolve over time, but in reality aren't amendable in a way we like, and are so built on an unsensible global computer that we can't really stop them. So we need to be cautious and thoughtful. You know, to quote Elon Musk, we need to be careful when we summon the demon here, because these things are potentially singletons that are going to look like they're democracies, but then they just become their own autonomous algorithms that run our lives, or they feel like democracies, but they're really not.
So we are adding a new danger to.
Sure, but you know that's life. I'm not saying, you know, I'm not some Luddite. You know, it's like we're going. The way it works with humanity, and you see this between Russia and China and the United States, is you can't stop progress because you can try to, but there's always going to be someone else, because it's a competitive world, who's going to do what you're not willing to do. And if you stand back and don't do it, and they do it, and they gain power asymmetry over you, then your moral position is going to get knocked out from underneath you because someone's going to be too strong and impose their will on you. So you can't really stop. You need to keep on moving. You just need to use your brain and moral sense and planning as you proceed.
Well, that's I think a very challenging job for the laboratory. So for the labs, we know Andorra is a lab, and we have an unfinished lab. Alex, do you think, are you ready for this challenge? You think you
Sorry?
can? Are you ready for this challenge of developing and
Completely.
bringing a?
Good answer.
Completely. No, not only that.
Andorra rules.
No, not only that, but disruptive innovation, in fact, improves what we were doing. So now we have to trust on what we have, the democracy as we have it, with the votes there, and we already trust in it because we go and we vote. No, the majority of people go and vote. No, so we trust. Now we know that we have a new system, disruptive innovation that allows us to do it much better. This is what it means. This means that if we already trust in the past one, with a new one, all of us in this room who are in the blockchain space, we believe in this, no? But of course, we have to take in care the accidents, no? So in all the disruptive innovations, there's accidents, no? And I always explain about the red ocean, no? Where everything is traced, the margins are small. There, of course, if you follow the rules of the establishment, you don't have accidents, no?
Yeah.
Whereas in the blue ocean where we are, where we're discovering, we're swimming in a place which is fantastic because we have a lot of opportunities, but watch out. If there's a shark coming around, you're the only thing to eat, no? So you have to swim fast, no? And by this, I mean, these are the proper things that we have to solve, no? For instance, you spoke before about privacy, but as I understand, with technology, there's a way now to put a blanket on the thing and you can conserve some. The important
There's a way
thing,
to take the blanket off also.
no, yeah, but for me, as a disruptive innovator, because all the disruptions need their rules, otherwise there's abuse. So for me, I agree with the blanket, but if there's a policeman or a judge saying, hey, put up the blanket, you can put the blanket. At the end, you have blockchain, it's a number, and the law is, if you put a name on that number, it's fine, because everything is written, no? So that's the
Okay, so
thing.
let me ask you, in Syria, do you want the policeman or the judge to pull back the blanket?
No, but in countries which are more civilized in that way and they're not confronting each other, then when they're able to show, and let me come back to the laboratory of Andorra, but here we are proving this disruption. And in fact, at the end, the good thing is that it's going to be converted into a commodity, something that technology solves. Whereas on that side, we have more time to think about new things, which are our projects on democracy, where we want to go, and we have much more things or much more time and resources to think about the real problems that problems on how we vote and all this gonna become a commodity. So in that sense, in the places where we can do and we have the chance to, we can put up front how to transform and show. And that's the purpose of Andorra is not and from the entrepreneurial side, our diversification area, its purpose is not even economic. Of course, the economic will come again, but the purpose is let's utilize, and that's why the small country, it's important also, let's utilize our platform as a transformative demonstration to countries like Syria. And apart from that, and to finish, watch out, where does blockchain best works nowadays?
It's also how it works.
In the places where there are problems, that's it.
It's also how it works. I mean, two axes we focus on for your issues you're talking about here to mitigate risk. And with more questions than answers at this stage, but one of them is ephemeral versus permanent data, and with encryption and this connection and disconnection to the blockchain, there's a lot of nuances there. And then the second one is capture, the idea of like designing into the system where power goes, not just straight from developers to disseminated, but more sophisticated views of how power moves, and the Ulysses Pact, where you want to put in hooks to prevent capture in the future. More questions and answers, but I agree those are kind of two key areas where we see those concerns in the design. early stage.
I really love it when the panel becomes independent, and because it shows that there is a lot to be said, but we're running out of time, unfortunately. I think it would have been very interesting to continue the conversation a little bit longer. But one quick final question to all of you. Are you positive or negative about the outcome of our democracies? What will our societies look like in, well, let's say 20 years? Just a quick one.
I'm always positive. I'm always hopeful. Always hopeful.
No, I think it's positive.
Positive?
I think it's up to us to make it positive.
Well, I think that that's really a very good final statement. It's always up on us, and I think that's what that was also what I was trying to express. And I hope that this panel was really giving some insight. And thanks to everybody on the panel. And yeah, I'm clearing the stage for the next program.
Thanks, teacher.
Thank you so much.